We heard knocking in the basement. 3 knocks, my dad knocked back as a joke. 3 knocks answered. He laughed and knocked twice. 2 knocks returned. Then the wall cracked slightly, and a hand pressed from the other side. It knocked once more. From inside the house, the handprint, an almost perfect negative of my own, slowly faded from the wallpaper, but the cold it left behind lingered, seeping into the plaster, into the room, into our very bones. My wife, Sarah, just stared, her face a mask of disbelief. Our daughter, Lily, who had been laughing moments before, was now silent, her wide eyes fixed on the spot where the hand had been. That night, sleep was a luxury none of us could afford. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of leaves outside, became a signal, a warning. We huddled together in the master bedroom, the door locked, a heavy dresser pushed against it. It felt foolish. But what do you do when the threat isn't trying to get in from the outside, but is already inside, living within the very structure of your home? The next day, we tried to rationalize, a trick of the light, a shared hallucination brought on by stress. We were new to the house. After all, old houses settle, they make strange noises. We desperately wanted to believe our own lies. But that evening, as I was putting Lily to bed, it happened again. She was tracing the patterns on her wallpaper, the same floral design as in the hallway. Her little finger followed a vine when suddenly, from the other side of the wall, another finger, long and pale, traced her path in perfect sync. Lily didn't scream, she just looked at me, her lower lip trembling, and whispered, "Daddy, the wall is playing with me." My blood ran cold. I snatched her up and ran from the room, slamming the door shut. Sarah saw the terror in my eyes and knew. The rationalizations were over. This was real. The activity grew more brazen. We'd hear soft tapping from inside the walls, following us from room to room. It was playful at first, like a child's game of tag, but the playfulness had a sinister edge. Then came the whispers, faint, sibilant sounds, just on the edge of hearing. You could never make out the words, but the intent was clear, like someone sharing a dark, terrible secret. One night I pressed a glass to the wall, hoping to hear more clearly. What I heard wasn't a whisper, it was a melody, a distorted, off-key lullaby, the kind you'd hear from a broken music box. It was coming from inside the wall, and it was getting louder. We called in experts, a structural engineer, a plumber, an electrician. They found nothing, no hidden cavities, no faulty pipes, no crossed wires. They looked at us with pitying smiles, suggesting we get our hearing checked or perhaps take a vacation. We were on our own. The entity, this thing in our walls, seemed to delight in our isolation. It started mimicking our voices. I'd be downstairs and hear myself calling for Sarah from the bedroom. Sarah would be in the garden and hear Lily crying for her from the attic. It was a cruel psychological game designed to fray our nerves, to turn us against the geography of our own home. We stopped trusting what we heard, what we saw. One afternoon I decided to fight back. Armed with a sledgehammer and a desperate kind of courage, I went to the spot in the hallway where it all began. Sarah begged me not to, a primal fear in her eyes. "Don't make it angry," she pleaded. But I had to know. What was it? What did it want? The first swing of the hammer sent a shockwave through the house. The plaster cracked, a cloud of fine white dust filled the air. I swung again and again, tearing a hole in the wall. The rhythmic thud of the hammer was the only sound, the house holding its breath. Then, a chunk of plaster and lath gave way, revealing the space behind. It wasn't empty. It wasn't insulation or wooden studs. It was dark, but not a natural darkness. It was a thick, viscous blackness that seemed to absorb the light. And from that darkness, a smell wafted out, a smell of damp earth, of decay, of something ancient and long forgotten. I peered closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. Inside the suffocating black, something moved. It wasn't a hand this time. It was a shape, vaguely humanoid, but twisted, elongated. It unfolded itself slowly from the cramped space, its limbs moving at unnatural angles, like a spider unfurling its legs. It had no discernible features, just a shifting, oily surface that seemed to writhe and coil. It wasn't made of flesh and bone, it was made of shadow. As it began to seep through the hole I had created, a voice echoed in my mind, not through my ears. It was the same distorted lullaby, but now I could hear the words. It was an old nursery rhyme, but the lyrics were wrong, twisted into a litany of sorrow and loss. It was singing about a child who was taken, a child who was hidden away, a child who became a part of the house. The entity in the wall wasn't a ghost, it was a memory, the house's memory, the agony of a past tragedy, given form and consciousness. It hadn't been trying to scare us, it had been trying to play. It thought Lily was the child it had lost, and it wanted to play with her, to keep her, forever. The shadow thing reached a slender, boneless tendril towards me. It wasn't an attack. It was an invitation to join it in the darkness, to become part of the house's memory, to be forgotten by the world outside. The whispers were its loneliness, the tapping its boredom, the handprint its desperate attempt to connect. We hadn't bought a house. We had bought a tomb that was still alive. Now, standing before the breach, I understood the true horror. It wasn't that the entity wanted to harm us, it was that it wanted to love us, and its love was a suffocating, eternal darkness from which there was no escape. We had to leave. But as I turned to run, I heard Lily's voice from her room, humming that same terrible lullaby. The wall wasn't just playing with her anymore, it was teaching her its song. The static on the baby monitor crackled, a sound that used to mean comfort but now felt like a prelude to terror. My wife, Sarah, and I were frozen, listening to the silence from Lily's room. The quiet was worse than the crying. Then, a new sound drifted through the speaker, faint at first, then growing clearer. It was humming, a slow, melodic, and deeply unsettling tune. It was the same lullaby my grandmother used to hum, a tune I hadn't heard in 30 years, a tune I had never, ever sung to Lily. My blood ran cold. Sarah's eyes widened, a hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. "Tom, what is that? How does she know that song?" I didn't have an answer. I grabbed the monitor, my hands shaking. On the small screen, Lily was sitting upright in her crib, her back to the camera. Her little head was swaying in time with the haunting melody. It wasn't just a random tune, she was humming it perfectly, note for note. "We have to get her," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. We crept out of our room and down the hallway. The humming grew louder, echoing from behind her closed door. It felt like the house itself was singing. I put my hand on the doorknob, took a deep breath, and pushed it open. The room was bathed in the dim glow of her nightlight. Lily was standing in her crib now, facing us. But her eyes, they weren't her eyes. They were wide, vacant, and fixed on something behind us in the hallway. The humming stopped. In the sudden silence, she spoke. Her voice was not the sweet babble of our daughter. It was raspy, ancient. "She's not here for the baby," the voice croaked from Lily's mouth. "She's here for the house. It's always been her house." My heart hammered against my ribs. What did that mean? Before I could process it, the temperature in the room plummeted. A dark, shifting shadow condensed in the corner of the ceiling, unfurling like smoke. It had no distinct shape, but I could feel its immense age and malevolence. "Let's go, now," I screamed, grabbing Sarah's arm. We turned to run, but the hallway door slammed shut with a deafening bang. We were trapped. We backed away from the door, towards the window, pulling a petrified Sarah with me. Lily just stood there, watching us, a faint, chilling smile playing on her lips. The shadow in the corner writhed and seemed to drip down the wall. As it moved, the wallpaper began to peel and curl, revealing older, faded patterns underneath layers upon layers of history, of other families, other lives. Then, the voice came again, not from Lily this time, but from everywhere at once, a chorus of whispers filling the room. "You are just guests," it hissed, "and your stay is over." The shadow lunged, not at us, but at the wall beside the crib. With a sound of splintering wood and tearing paper, it ripped a hole in the wall. Inside the cavity, nestled in the old insulation, was a small, tattered bundle of cloth. A doll, a crude, handmade thing with button eyes and a stitched hand smile, eerily similar to the one now on my daughter's face. I finally understood. The entity wasn't attached to my grandmother or to Lily. It was tied to the house, to that doll. It had been here all along, waiting. It would find a child in each generation, a vessel to sing its song and reclaim its home. As the shadow enveloped the doll, Lily's eyes rolled back in her head, and she collapsed into her crib, silent. The room was still, too still. We stood there, paralyzed, not knowing if the nightmare was over or just beginning. We were no longer owners of this house. We were just the latest exhibits in its haunted collection. Thanks for watching. Follow for more chilling tales.